DIDX offers communication companies to offer DID phone numbers from around the world. DIDX has numbers from over 60 countries and over 9,000 cities with instant activation and low monthly rates. These numbers can be used for calling card, VoIP, callback, call forwarding, PBXs, mobile phones, voicemail, faxing or any other voice service you can think of. Numbers are also available on per channel, per minute and per trigger basis. In addition, you will be provided with 2 free numbers to test the compatibility and interconnection with your switch. All buying is done through your own website, with DIDX running transparently in the background, provisioning the phone numbers through your server over SIP. Our API and web service will empower you to integrate entire DIDX inventory of numbers on your website, enabling your site to have millions of phone number choices instantly. Your company gains an excellent reputation with increased revenue, more satisfied customers, and a global presence. Try out today and see what over 20,000 companies have already discovered. DIDX.net.
But you said that people are basically peaceful, but still the anger gets wakened up for whatever reasons, and that creates destruction like Hitler or whatever you want to call it. Even there is a utopia and all of a sudden, whatever you want to call it, limbic brain, some call it, there's a brain on the...
I'm not going to call it reptilian brain.
I don't know.
Number of reptiles, love.
So how do we avoid that as humankind if we're actually approaching the paradise? Then are there some learnings which you have to offer where people can either control their anger or not go to work?
Yes, we learn. When we learn how to learn, then anger, does anger exist? Of course it does. If somebody's taking away my food, just an immediate reaction for being angry about it. Or somebody being hurt, angry. And many people around the world at the moment still think that the main motivation, the big energy, is revenge. People want revenge, and that's primary, they say. And I'm saying that's not true. You look at people who want revenge. Why do they want a revenge? Because what? Something has been damaged, something has been taken, something has been destroyed, and they get hurt. So if their parents, if a little child sees their parents being beaten up, how is that child going to feel? It knows that it's relatively powerless, it knows that it can't stop its parents being beaten up. So what does it feel? Pain, anger, frustration. And so often the thought will be, they damaged my parents, my mummy and daddy. I'll damage them because I've got to stop them doing something that I don't want to happen. I'm going to stop people who are causing suffering. Why? Because I, the little child, don't want suffering. And that's the prime goal. Love. I don't want suffering. And so I'll stop people who are suffering. But a slightly more intelligent level of thinking about that is what we have to do is calm the suffering, help others, aid happiness, peacefulness, non-suffering. And when the human being really develops that, what kind of person do they become? They become wise, they become elders, They become grandmas and grandpas who all the kids love. They become good leaders who are focused on erasing the suffering and therefore increasing the probability of peace and love and interconnectivity and good evolution.
I have a very interesting question for elderlies. You say that elderlies are more peaceful, but as I really believe also that what has to be taught now is no longer information, but how to learn that information.
Yes, how to learn is the prime...
Forgetting what we have learned in the past and relearning that, because
no, we can,
everything is obsolete, like typewriter.
No. We can remember what we've learned. You know, I remember having been taught the wrong way to take notes. And I experienced it. I actually went through linear note-taking with, black or blue or grey writing and doing line after line after line of boring stuff. And I bored my brain, which wandered off and shut down, switched off, went to sleep. And I learned that. Now, I don't want to erase my memory of that. I want to remember that, because then I know what is an incorrect formula. I know that, and therefore I have much more energy to do something else other than that, to learn to use colour in my notes, because I love colours, as does everybody. Rather than in my normal boring notes, I use branches so that the thinking becomes manifested as organic, as natural, as an integrated structure of thought. I use images. Why images in my notes? Because there are all those images. And a picture is worth what? Picture is 1,000 words. So the note is filled with boom, 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 1,000 words, 1,000, flashing notes. And that's a mind map. Now, I know that, and I know how boring and how dull and how non-associative and how disintegrated and how dulling my thinking is. Do I want to forget that? No, I don't want to forget that. I want to remember it, because that gives me even more truth to note with a mind map, to release my own brain. So whatever one has done, whatever we've done to make mistakes, to learn well, we don't have to unlearn it, because unlearning it can be really difficult. Because if I'm focusing on something, what does my brain do? It focuses on it. So if I'm focusing on unlearning, then I'm focusing again on what I was learning that I didn't want to learn. So I just remember it. I hold it there as a treasured memory, and I move on. But it's always there. So it stays, and I move. Much nicer. Spans time.
People who pass a certain age, because there is an information overload, and most people are closed to newer ideas. And whenever you try to teach them a newer idea, they are sort of repelled from it. One, they're not listening, or two, the person who's telling is not telling it in the right language or direction way, or the right mind map. What's the best practice in your opinion to teach them to learn something new? Because this is something we have to, for the next 20, 30 years, constantly do. Because every 5 years, I think, we will have to reinvent everything we learn today, because of the massive amount of knowledge being created globally, no longer from one country, no longer from one place is it coming. Now, a billion Chinese are going to start creating knowledge every single day using their mobile phone in form of video, in form of a blog, in form of tweets, in form of small bits of pieces of information, which is all connecting and becoming, as you said, a huge global brain. And that requires to learn every few years a new tool.
The good news This is a kind of a common tidal wave of thought, that every 5 years we're going to have to relearn everything. It's all going to be new. And I'm saying, no, it isn't. The truths about the brain are fundamental. The way in which the brain learns by imaging and by multisensorily connecting, it's not going to change in 5 years. You're not going to kind of take out bits of the brain and say, well, we don't need any more images in there. We don't need color. We don't need thinking tools that reflect the way we think, because the way we think is the way we have always thought. 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, with the first humanoids, how did they think? Images, smells. And how did they then develop that? Logic, analysis, thinking. And they developed it, and then they thought, let's connect this and that, and they suddenly developed a new theory, or they developed a new product, a new tool. So the good news is that for another 10,000 years, same news. So you don't have to keep on learning about who you are. You have to learn the fundamental truths. And then, in 5 years, you're going to learn a new skill, a new tool that you can use with your same brain. But your brain is going to be more developed in terms of its thinking. And therefore, the more we know that, the more we know how to learn. So in 5 years, there are a few new things to learn. Easy, because the human brain can learn anything easily. And you watch children. How do children learn? Absolutely flexibly. When the human brain is born, as we are now, say, in Pakistan, what language does that brain end up speaking? Urdu. What does a little baby learn when it's in a suburb of Kyoto in Japan? That language. So the human brain, wherever it was, can learn it. And you don't see babies, in England or China looking up and say, oh my goodness, Chinese, I'll never learn that. Every baby, fascinating, I can learn that, I'll check it out, and sure enough, in a couple of years, they've got it. And it's any language. How many languages are possible? Infinite. And the brain, the basic human brain, the baby brain, can learn any language. It can learn Portuguese, it can learn Chinese, it can learn Portuguese, it can learn music ease, mathematic ease, science ease, history ease. It can learn anything. So the future is a very comfortable, enjoyable, productive, creative future. And one of the big changes that is going to be made is, what about these older brains? The assumption has been, horrendously, that as you get older, your brain gets worse. So by the time you're 45, your memory's gone, your brain cells are all dropping off. All rubbish. The human brain actually, increasingly now we know, generates new brain cells. And not only that, it definitely generates more interconnectivity. Why? Because the brain cells want to connect with each other, form the network. So the more the brain is stimulated, the more it learns, the more it creates, the more it imagines, the more it daydreams, the more integrated and powerful it gets. So as the human brain gets older, it should be getting better. Why? You've got infinitely more data, and you know how to connect with it, you know how to relate to it, you know how to link chemistry with art, with religion, with geography, with poetry, with literature, with anything, when you've got enough data and knowledge in there. So as the brain gets older, it becomes more profoundly powerful. And therefore, people, when they're getting older, instead of thinking, oh, you know, I'm 35 and I'm getting old, and they should be thinking, I'm only 35. Only 35. And look at those 80-year-olds. Look at those 90-year-olds who are climbing mountains, flying around in the air, who are taking new PhD studies, which they do, once their brain is appreciated. And therefore the resource of the planet for these older people it's a gold mine, it's an oil well in knowledge, and it develops into wisdom and utopia.
So what you're saying is that in order to evolutionize or revolutionize, when we are around the people who we can mimic and we can copy, who are in that evolutionary stage better than or different than we are, we will also automatically evolve.
Yes, I mean, one of the, if you like, the natural progression of the human being and the evolution is that overall what people do is copy. So the way that the baby learned language, purely copying. That all the great geniuses, especially for example in the field of art, what did they do? They copied the masters first and studied what the masters did, and then they evolved from that because they'd kind of got it. They got the next genius, and then they developed their own. And the brain does that. So you look at the history of the development of medicine. What did the hospitals and doctors do? Copied. And now that cultures are coming together, people are starting to copy people who are copying, who are copying, who are copying, and you're suddenly finding that medicine, rather than just being, you know, mechanical Western, or being herbal, in other words, we mix those formula that help us get better. So it's not Western medicine against Chinese medicine, against African medicine. It's, my goodness, look at all this. Look at all these millions of brains around the planet for centuries have been working on how to help you get better, how to make you feel healthier, how to help you live longer. How did they do that? They worked on it. They analyzed life and the human. So around the world at the moment, lots and lots of good material. And when you synergize it, everything's better. I mean, the simplest thing, one of my doctor friends, in the beginning of the 20th century, you know, he was a student in about the 1930s, and he was going to be a doctor, a medical doctor. And the medical profession said to him, what would your thesis like to be? And he said, I would like to do a thesis on nutrition. And the doctor said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you know, the food, how that affects the body. And the doctors and examiners, 100 and a bit years ago, 100 years ago, said, look, young man, don't be stupid. You know, whatever you eat is fine, it doesn't really change much. That's not a thesis. Do something else. And he thought, you know, they're all insane. Because food does change what we are, transform. So if we eat malnutrition, then the cells don't grow properly. The circulation is not good. The brain doesn't get the energy, so it can't think. Good food builds bones, builds muscles, builds cells, helps blood, helps oxygenate, helps the brain grow. So nutrition, vital. But 100 years ago, vast swathes of individuals were saying it doesn't make any difference. But now, we know it does. And you look globally now at people eating food. More involvement in eating food than in the history of the earth. Everybody's experimenting with it, checking the vitamins, looking at which vegetable, which fruit, which meat, which fish does what for what, for what, for what. So the evolution of the human race is moving on, and the exchange is in a sense like mutual mimicking. Call it MM, you can call that mind maps, or you can call it mutual mimicking, copying the best and then evolving it. And the media is allowing that also to multiply the positive effect. And I can go on for the rest of the year. Indeed, the rest of my life.
So when Barry and you were running for the butterflies when you were 7, was there a Lisa there somewhere, or only Barry was there? Was there? So what happened with your personal life after you 20, 25? Did you get married?
My personal life evolved and continues so to do. I invented the mind map. I was teaching children who were supposed to be ineducable, but when they mind mapped, the brains would open up, and you would realize that these children who were called stupid were brilliant, wonderful children. And so I began to teach, and I taught in disadvantaged schools, and I loved teaching those students. I mean, their imaginations were unshackled. Many of the children in a good education system were actually shackled. But these children, often like the dyslexic or children who didn't get into school, their imaginations were still able to roam, were free. And so I was doing that, and then the BBC television discovered what I was doing and asked if I would do a half-an-hour program. And I said yes, I would love to. Because again, I wanted more and more people to know about this. And so we had a meeting, and they were saying, well, in this program we need you to introduce the brain, we need a section on memory and forgetting, a section on note-taking, a section on this new note-taking technique eventually called mind maps, a section on reading, a section on studying, and I was noting it in a mind map. So I had a little television set with a little brain in it, and a branch for the brain, a branch for memory and forgetting, branch for study, branch for notes and mind mapping. And as this mind map was building, the head of the BBC Education said, I say, young man, he said, this mind map looks more like 10 programs than one. And I said, yes, sir, it does. He said, jolly good, 10 programs. And I said, yes, sir. And as he was walking out, he looked back at the mind map, he said, could you write a book on that? And I said, yes, sir, I could. Jolly good, 10 programs and a book. And that was use your head. And it wasn't me who was asking for 10 programs. It was the mind map saying, hey, everybody, I want everybody to know about me. I'm a mind map. And sure enough, with the 10 programs, they were then shown 3 times a year till 1989. From 74 to 89, shown mind maps. So the mind map which is a flower of intelligence, was almost like a little thinking animal. And it was like a beautiful little animal saying, you know, hey everybody, you know, I'll help you be creative, I'll help you learn, I'll help you, I'll stimulate you, you know, I'll be colorful, I will be like a flower, and you will have a garden, you know, a gigantic, infinite garden of beautiful flowers. And so I did that program, and people obviously asked if I would go and teach around the world. So the mind maps led me around. I mean, they were like a companion saying, Tony, come, you know, come to China, come to New Zealand, come to Mexico. And so I did. So I was in this wonderful field of flowers. And I am still doing that. Why do I love to go to different countries? Because on one level, they're all the same, in the best way of all the same. They are all energetic. They are all fundamentally intelligent. They are all creative. They all have tens to hundreds to millions and billions of children who everybody wants to flourish. What better place can you be in?
Did you have any children?
Did I have children? I had to think about that.
Beside mine now.
Yes, my maps are like children. But my thought was, am I going to get married? And I 3 to 4 times fell very deeply in love with ladies. And I was thinking, obviously I'd like to get married. And the main reason for being married would be to have children, to have the gene line, the genetic line. But I also thought about genes, the gene and the neme, N-E-M-E. And the neme is like a gene of thought. So for example, if you hear da 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 dum, Beethoven, Ode to Joy. So the minute you hear that, it's a seed in your thought, isn't it? And Beethoven is no longer there, or is he? Because all those amazing thoughts of his, all that music, is flowering. So does he have children? And I consider myself to be like a child of Beethoven, because when I fell in love with his symphonies, his music, his piano concertos, violin concerto, I was enraptured, and I thought Beethoven. I didn't think, you know, a decomposed body somewhere in Germany. I was thinking, you know, this phenomenal mind, that he was alive. So I then began to think, if I have children, I'm a very focused individual, and I love kids, and I believe that a baby is magical. And if I had them, what would I do? And I know what I would do. I would stay with them. I wouldn't be traveling all over the place. I would want to play, study them, learn from them, and that would be my life. So I thought, am I going to be a father in the sense of the seeds of thought, or genetic seeds? And I thought, I'll continue to rehearse, but I will primarily be a father with names, thinking. And so when I am traveling around the world, some of the most treasured experiences for me are when I go into another country and a little child comes up and says, Uncle Tony, look, and they show me a mind map. And I think, wow, How beautiful. And is that a child of mine? On one level, yes it is. So, yes, I do have children. Do I love them? Yes. Do I have biological children? I don't think so.
Not that you know of.
Correct.
DIDX offers communication companies to offer DID phone numbers from around the world. DIDX has numbers from over 60 countries and over 9,000 cities with instant activation and low monthly rates. These numbers can be used for calling card, VoIP, callback, call forwarding, PBXs, mobile phones, voicemail, faxing or any other voice service you can think of. Numbers are also available on per channel, per minute and per trigger basis. In addition, you will be provided with 2 free numbers to test the compatibility and interconnection with your switch. All buying is done through your own website, with DIDX running transparently in the background, provisioning the phone numbers through your server over SIP. Our API and web service will empower you to integrate entire DIDX inventory of numbers on your website, enabling your site to have millions of phone number choices instantly. Your company gains an excellent reputation with increased revenue, more satisfied customers, and a global presence. Try out today and see what over 20,000 companies have already discovered. DIDX.net